welcome everybody today because, again, we're with the amazing and fabulous Mel Asher. But remember, not just that, she is been a chief marketing officer for a gazillion years.
Hey, now, I'm not that old.
No,
I was not alive when T-Rexes were alive, okay?
This is true. This is true.
And let's not forget about the amazing Valerie Cobb, who, while she's not necessarily owned her own business for a gazillion years, she is insanely smart and has done amazing things in the, what is it, a half of a decade? So about 5 years you've owned your own business? Although you've owned businesses before. So there are things. So you don't get to claim that. I know we just talked about that, but you don't get to claim that you have a newer business. You are just as much of a rock star as I am. Maybe not this particular, you don't have the time in this particular business that I have in mind, but that doesn't mean you are not a business owner or as I was recently called, a serial entrepreneur.
Yes, I am a serial entrepreneur. I think we were referencing more the fractional chief revenue officer shtick instead of the full-time CEO and chief revenue officer shtick. So anyways, yes, Mel and I have both been in business owners and as well as worked in many organizations in various flavors of what we're talking about on Mindsetaholics. So anyway, but we have a great topic today.
So the topic, would you like to tell the topic today, since I think I revealed it last time?
I'm going to let you.
So we are going to talk about the difference between go-to-market, or GTM as it's often called, and stay in market. So SIM, we'll give it a new acronym. GTM to SIM.
Yes, we're category blazers here.
Everybody wants to talk about GTM and everybody wants to be a GTM expert and everybody wants to hire a GTM expert. GTM's fabulous. It starts you, it gets you rolling, but if you don't stick with it, did it really work? Was it really helpful? Or did you just get the excitement and go, and then all of a sudden, squirrel over here?
Okay, we got to pop up a squirrel on that one. I guess at the end of the day, one of the questions that we should kind of ask ourselves is, with GTM, some listeners may not understand that acronym, so go-to-market strategy. And I think and I say at the end of the day all the time, so I'm going to stop doing that because I'm tired of that phrase. Anyway, I think there are so many what we will call GTM artists out there, because actually to create a go-to-market strategy, it takes a fair amount of work, but very little accountability over time.
That's an interesting perspective of calling a GTM specialist an artist. From an overall perspective, I have always said that a really good marketer blends art and science, because a really good person in marketing is going to know the science of it in addition to the art of it, because it's a both and, it's not a one or the other. GTM is often phrased or positioned as a set checkbox that any company can do and it guarantees success. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I believe there's flavors of that. I think that there are, just like anything out there, there are imposters, because you and I were talking about really the definition of marketing, period. And, the goal. So the goal, marketing, going into a market, and the goal of anything like that is going to be conversions to whatever the definition of your organization's sale is, right? So if your organization is a nonprofit, and you're trying to get people to give charitable contributions, that is a conversion or a sale. So people, a lot of times when we talk about sales being a 4-letter word, and the reason behind some of these mindsets, we're on Mindsetaholics, right? is ultimately, I think sometimes we try to hide between what you were saying earlier on, you and I meet frequently. Earlier, you were saying, everybody kind of thinks of marketing, first of all, as the fun. It's graphics, it's art, it's this. And I would think that you are correct. It's absolutely some of those things all tied up in some other things. So science and that. But when you're dealing with startups or you're dealing with those, really a go-to-market strategy means you're getting to market with something, right? So how are you going to promote it? How are you going to get conversions? What's the goal and the best practice of it? So you can create those strategies quarterly. You can create those strategies annually. You can at the startup of a company, right? The broader challenge is when there is some that have it as a checkbox. So you see a lot of AI happening right now, and it's here's a canned go-to-market strategy. Of course, that's a collective universe of everybody's opinions of what a go-to-market strategy actually is. So if you don't understand the science behind it, you won't be able to correct it because you will be seeing the shiny, pretty object of it. So yes and no. I'll just say yes and maybe to that statement.
Okay, so let's talk about if you were to condense a go-to-market strategy down to 5 key elements, what would you say those are?
Wow, this is making me think today, Mel. That's not fair. Fundamentally,
well, we have to lay the foundation so we can get over to a stay in market strategy. Yeah. So let's start.
We've got to identify the market. Number one.
Really? Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Okay, 5. Let's see. Identify the market. Identify the types of personas within that market, TAM, SAM, the addressable portions of that, and the SOM, the service obtainable market share of that, so that you can even use the science behind a go-to-market strategy to then create the resources necessary. But it's all about a little bit of just kind of pinpointing, because you're not Microsoft, you're not Google. You've got to get to a point where you are whittling down the best targeting that you can possibly get to then say which resources are you going to use and build. How do you know that the best plan is to be on YouTube? We were talking about this, right? So the steps are really like any other steps. Identify the target first, which takes research and time,
Okay, so if we're going to chunk this into 5, obviously everyone
you're better at systems.
Feel free to correct me. But I would say it is identify the market. Mm-hmm. And then there's details within that, the psychographics, the demographics,
yep.
And nuances that are relevant to the market. So we have identify the market. We have to identify a budget, because if we don't have a budget, that is going to severely alter our ability to get our message out there. So
man, I missed that one. And that's the one that I'm so key on for the science side of it, right? To me, in my brain, how you have those, I have a brother, we're sidestepping, but I have a brother who I call him the absent-minded professor. And if he's watching this, he knows what I mean. But at the end of the day, he is so
He knows we love him.
brilliant, and he could do math just in his head, right? And so it could be calculus, it could be Einstein's theory of relativity. Someone would ask the question and he'd give them the answer. Mm-hmm. He would try to tutor somebody on it, and it was like, I'd have to tell you the steps in between, and I don't know how to do that. I just know the answer. To me, budget is part of identifying part of the market. Yeah. So sorry.
Okay, so we have to identify our audience. We have to identify our budget. Yep. We have to identify our messaging. What do we need our audience to hear? And equally, what are they willing to hear and are going to be receptive to? So messaging is a two-sided coin, if you will.
Can I augment messaging? Yeah. You're saying we need to identify within those. There's a lot of steps on how to identify that. So
in all of
that's
these,
where I struggle with a 5-step process, because I'm like,
Yes. Well, remember, I said 5 elements. I don't think I said 5 steps.
You're right. You said 5 elements. Sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
And all of these, we could have an entire hour-plus long conversation on. I'm just trying to frame what should all be in an actual go-to-market strategy to help make companies successful. So this way, if a founder is presented with a canned option or a canned template, they can be smart enough and say, you know what? I get where you're going with this, but there's a few things missing or a few things that we need to dive into more detail about before we execute. Because that's where I think a lot of companies go wrong, is they'll take this canned template and assume, oh, it is best of the best. This company has done it, so it has to work for us. No. That's why understanding these core elements are going to help you look at an actual go-to-market strategy and say, this will work for our company. I'm sure you've worked with companies where essentially competitors, where one strategy works for one company, but it does not work at all for the competitor, even though it's the same industry and same perceived value.
Yes, and along those lines, think of a go-to-market strategy as, what would you have to do? And you can correct me if I'm wrong in this, and that's okay with me. I'm wrong quite often. I live on that side. But I used to say all the time, for your go-to-market strategy, if you can't take it before a Shark Tank and get it passed. So your consumer, whether that's a nonprofit, whether that's for-profit, I don't care if it's B2C, D2C, I don't care what that is, right? B2B, if you can't get it past the consumer, which, remember, in a Shark Tank, that's the consumer, right? I'm not going to invest in your product because I don't believe in it, right? If your go-to-market strategy does not pass that litmus test, it's not a go-to-market strategy. You haven't finalized your go-to-market strategy. So in the 5 steps, remembering that you have to actually pressure test said messaging, not 5 steps, 5 key elements, pressure testing, which is a bunch of other, things within there, pressure testing the pricing and pressure testing, because somebody might not even pay or invest that kind of money, right? Or, like I said, in the sense of a nonprofit, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you a charitable donation because I don't believe in what you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. So you can translate that, the commercial side of the fence, over to the nonprofit side of the fence. But yeah, those are the core elements. Did we hit 5?
I don't know. I was just thinking that. I'm like, I don't know if we hit 5. Let's count. Okay, so we have audience, we have budget, we have...
You said
messaging. We have the deliverable, meaning how it'll be delivered, whether it'll be in-person events, whether it'll be social, whether It'll be physical product or, physical magazines or whatever. And then I would say the last element is exactly what you just said. It's the pressure testing.
Yeah.
And then it's how to make decisions accordingly. And sometimes it's not, did it generate sales? Yes or no. Sometimes the answer is more complex. Okay, we learned A, we learned B, 3 totally screwed us up, 4 was successful, and 5 gave us let's make these changes and then run another round. So it's about iteration.
It is. And the currency for that iteration, right?
Yes.
So at the end of I just said it again, at the end of the day.
I don't have a little icon I can put up on the screen for that.
I know. What is wrong with me? Oh my gosh. That is so crazy. Anyways, so when we're talking about the iterations, that is what we mean when we say iterating. It's not a one and done process, because just like people are fluid, so are companies. And that brings us to the stay in market strategies, because you get these pre-canned things. It could be AI. I'm a big chat GPTer. I love it, love it, love it, love it. Saves me so much time and energy, right? But at the same token, the stay in market strategy is very different, or SIM, as we have now coined it. I don't want to get it mixed up with a SIM card, but SIM, right?
I was thinking the Sims game, but hey, we can totally go with SIM card as well. Where it's relevant with the Sims game is we're essentially gamifying go to market. So it's not a one and done strategy. It reinforces the iteration and the progression and continuing to generate interest. So I'm liking this analogy the more that I'm thinking about it. Can totally run with this.
And that's the thing. So you reach a stage, let's say it's a Series C stage, if you're not really a startup, but you've got investment. If you're Series C, you're probably past that stage. But in your growth cycle, all businesses, I love Jim Collins' Good to Great, all businesses, Walmart, Walgreens, right now, Rite Aid is having its bumps and bruises. What were some of the other good to greaters that he cited? Or in conscientious capitalism, it was Whole Foods, it was the same kind of thing. But
my company has its own issues that we could go down a rabbit hole on.
I know. But in the book, Conscientious Capitalism, they use Whole Foods a lot. Believe it or not, a lot of those companies, even that in good to great, are no longer greats, right? They actually went under, that were cited. But you have these very long organizations that are really at the top of the heap. And what they have had to do is reinvent themselves over and over and over again. And this is what I really mean by the stay in market portion of it, because that gets to a point where you're not trying. A go-to-market strategy also encompasses the resources necessary, right? So that's where the financials and the budget, whether you spend this much on marketing, whether you spend this much on sales teams, because we're going to say that the whole goal of marketing is conversion of something, right? So whether you actually have humans, whether you have automation, whether you don't have automation, I know you're laughing because I'm like, humans, we're good humans, but I mean,
I'm just envisioning who else is buying besides humans.
Well, right now it's kind of like Terminator. It's like AI.
I know. That's what I was envisioning. Because we can choose. Do we want our audience to be humans? Do we want them to be robots? What do we want them to be? There's so many opportunities and options right now.
Yeah. And that's even when we talk about algorithms, right? Are you feeding a human or are you feeding an algorithm? I mean, it's not, again, there are so many strategies within each of those elements that can kill that bring us to the stay in market.
Yep.
Right? You can here, I need a new go-to-market strategy. And you're like, or do you need a stay-in-market strategy? Or do you need an iteration? Or maybe we don't need a go-to-market and a stay-in-market. We need an iteration in market.
Well, I think what we're saying is go-to-market ultimately evolves into a stay-in-market.
Yes.
And when done correctly, regardless of the size of the company or the stage of the company, it's a cycle and they're going to repeat it. So you don't just do go-to-market when you first open your doors. You're going to go to market every time you approach a new market, you launch a new product, you launch in a new area. Anytime you do that, or even if you change messaging, you're essentially starting that cycle over. So go-to-market becomes this circular process that starts with go-to-market and evolves then into the stay-in market. And it becomes this iterative process that companies constantly go through. Yeah. From the behind the scenes, it's managing of complex details, everything from messaging to operations to alignment with the internal team to the external, the visual, the sexy, the making sure it comes across in the appropriate, yes. we don't have low enough cut clothes on today.
Oh yeah, no, we're very much not the booth babes.
No, definitely not. Not us at all. Oh wow.
Sorry.
Squirrel.
Sorry. But to wind it up for today, to talk about mindset, if you're in a business and your mindset is it's one and done,
we got to work on the mindset.
Well, I was going to say, you got to work on the mindset. And too often both of us get called. They're like, can you fix my problem tomorrow? And we're like, so what problem are we trying?
Yes. And this is the problem you have conscious awareness of and are willing to admit. I'm willing to bet that if you bring Valerie and or I in for any problem, we're going to identify at least 20 others that either you didn't know of and or you didn't want to admit.
Or that you didn't even understand when you put your prompt in for ChatGPT, which is the whole nother episode. But at the end of the day, and I did say it, it is a mindset. So founders, anybody who's working on something, you just want to try to throw one little hard thing at it and say, I hope it sticks. Guess what? In an AI-driven world, that's problematic to begin with. And you are probably, what is it? You're in a chaos theory. You're in the random. You're hoping that everything, you throw up all the marbles and they come back organized. That's about how insane it is, instead of going everywhere. So
I don't know about you, but I've never seen marbles do exactly what I want when I want them to do it. But that's just me.
No, and that's the whole point. It's and there's scientific theory behind that to say it could happen. But and I could by tomorrow become a company as big as Amazon. Mm-hmm. that's what we're comparing it to when we're talking about that kind of thing. So I think this has been a great episode. Hopefully you guys love it, like it, drop comments, tell us what else you want us to do. And on there, if you have any myths you want us to bust, we'll do our best to do that for you, from our opinion.
Everything is with the caveat of our own personal opinions.
Exactly.
Sometimes you'll agree with them and sometimes you won't. And you don't need to.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay with us. This is therapeutic. This is Mindsetaholics. We're actually on
We're
here to have
processing what's going on in our brain at this particular moment, whether it's relevant to you or not.
Exactly. All right. Well, thanks, Mel, for being on this one. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All righty. We'll see everybody next time.
Bye.